Hi everyone, I'm Terrellon. Welcome to Time Out with Tinseltown Mom. I'm here today with Shantelle Bisson, parenting expert and author of the book, Raising Your Kids Without Losing Your Cool. Today she's going to share some of her best advice from her book that will prayerfully encourage other moms along the challenging journey of motherhood. Hi Shantelle, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. You're going to be helping all of us today, so I'm excited to have you here.
Well, I sure hope so. That's the goal.
Yes. So I know you've raised 3 daughters. Can you just start by just telling us a little bit about you and your family dynamic?
Yeah, sure. Well, my husband and I first met when we were 15 years old through a mutual friend that he had done a movie with way back in the day, and his co-star went to high school with me. So that's how
Oh, really?
so that's how we got introduced to each other. But I was dating somebody else at the time. So it wasn't until we ended up at an audition together where we had to play boyfriend and girlfriend and kiss that we actually started dating. And things escalated pretty quickly from that audition.
That's an awesome story.
It's a pretty fun story. Yeah. So after that audition, he's famous for saying in all his interviews, we didn't get the commercial, but I got the girl. So,
well, tell everyone who your husband is, though, just for those who don't know.
Oh, yeah, sure, for sure. His name is Yannick Bisson, and he's an actor. We're based out of Canada, and his current TV series that's on is called Murdoch Mysteries, and it's going into season 14 is airing right now, and it's going into season 15. So it's pretty exciting. That doesn't happen very often in the land of television. And a lot of your listeners actually might know him from his Hallmark movies, the Aurora Tea Garden series, where he played Candace Cameron Bure's love interest. So.
Oh, what year was that? Because his face, I remember I was thinking that I saw him on a Hallmark billboard or something.
Yeah. I think, you know what? I think he was a part of the series from maybe 2017, 2018. I can't remember. Gosh, it's all a blur. You know how life goes by.
Oh, no,
quickly,
I know.
But yeah, it's just wild. I mean, we've already been in this pandemic for almost a year, which is hard to believe. But yeah, so we started dating quite young, and we had our first daughter, actually. We had been together not even 6 months when we found out we were pregnant. And so we were kind of thrust into adulthood, rather quickly. And, we didn't know each other that well. And of course, he got down on bended knee. I was like, marry me. And I said, well, why don't we do this first? Why don't we get to know each other and have this baby and see how we actually do?
Yeah.
And then we could talk about whether we like each other and whether or not we should actually get married. So that's what we did. And then by the time we were 21, we had our second daughter. We got married, and she was literally born nine months minus a day to our wedding date.
Wow.
And then later on, well, we were obviously the only people having children at that time, right? All our friends were in university.
Right.
So we didn't know anybody who had children. So we were kind of going it alone. And, he comes from a divorce family, a broken home, and his dad's since remarried. And, the same thing with me. My parents divorced when I was 13, and my dad remarried and had a whole other family. So we didn't really have a whole lot of tools to work with on how to build a good family and a strong family. So we ended up, funny enough, I was a professional cheerleader. And one of the football players in Canada, I cheered for the Toronto Argonauts. And one of the football players was part of this non-denominational church. And he started reaching out and sharing his faith with some of the cheerleaders. And a couple of the girls ended up joining the church. And I went to service. And I remember thinking, wow, these people really have got it together. They seem really joyful. They seem really, really unified. And, the couple seemed in love. And so, I went for a few months, and then Yannick kind of tagged along, and we spent a few years hanging out there, and we really learned how to build a foundation, a strong family foundation, and how to discipline kids with love. And I think those 5 years with that organization were a tremendous help in allowing us to build, because, we hadn't had that experience with our own families. So once we were, in the church, and we had lived in New Zealand and also in California, everybody was having babies. Finally, we were with a group of people that were having children.
Yeah.
So we're like, you know what? Maybe two is really good, but I don't know. Maybe we should try again. Maybe we'll get your son. Maybe we'll get a boy out of this. So we tried again, and I miscarried the third baby between our middle girl Dominique and our youngest Michaela. But it's that old saying is you don't know what you don't know, and had we had that baby, we would never have Michaela, who's our youngest, who's just really the glue of the family. Like I'm famous for saying that we were a crew, but Michaela made us a family. Something about
Aw.
her energy and her essence just kind of finished us off and completed us. So it's really a beautiful story. So, we've been parents and raising kids and raising ourselves, for more of our life than we haven't been at this point.
Right. I love that story. Wow. That's so encouraging. So you were both 19 when you first became parents. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, exactly. We were 19. She was born in March. He turned 20 in May, and I turned 20 in June. So we were babies.
Wow.
By
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
today's standards, we were babies. Back when
Exactly.
my mom was having kids, it was like we were already old.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just going back to when you were 19, both of you coming from broken families, and now you're 19 and now you're going to be a parent. So initially, like in your head, were you thinking, okay, I'm going to do things differently? Or did you just kind of go with the flow? Like, what was it like during those infancy years, I guess, as a parent, like raising your daughter?
Yeah, well, that's actually a really good question that I haven't been asked before. I think, for us at 19, we really didn't know. Obviously, we didn't know what we were doing, but we also didn't know what to expect. We didn't have anybody to look to, because when my aunts were having kids, obviously I was young. I was running around and playing. So I didn't know the first thing about, how to feed them, when to change them, how, all the ways that you care for a child. And I mean, Yannick was a guy, running around Toronto. He was a hugely successful actor, and, he knew how to catch girls. He didn't know how to raise them. We were learning on the fly for sure. And, for us, and unfortunately for our first daughter, Brianna, she had a lot of health issues that, back, and I say this, and I say this in my book, Raising Your Kids Without Losing Your Cool, like back in the day, but really it's 32 years ago. And
Yeah.
it really is back in the day. Like we didn't know about holistic health and healing. And, we didn't know about osteopath care for babies, and we didn't know and I had this girlfriend that did this really interesting thing, this transition from birth. She did this amazing therapy with her son, and it takes you back, it takes you back to the delivery and the birthing, and there's all kinds of things you can do to help now, that you can help a child with, who has trauma related back to the birthing process that wasn't available to us then. And, we're kids, and, God love my mom. My mom moved in with us for 2 weeks, and, she helped. I was trying my best to nurse. She wanted to nurse every hour. She was so uncomfortable and so much pain that I couldn't produce enough milk, and I was getting, backed up and engorged. I was now starting to have all my own health issues. So it was really a lot. It was really emotionally distressing, because we were young and we thought, wow, we're really ruining this little person, by just not having any knowledge and not being prepared. So it was traumatic. It was certainly traumatic for us, and I'm confident it was for her too. And I just think it's really awesome. And I say this in my book, like now we're so fortunate, the internet can be used for good and evil. And when you use it for the good, you can get so much information and so much education that was not available and accessible to us when we were having, our babies. And I just think had we had access to all those things, that it probably would have been a lot smoother of a transition into parenthood, and certainly would have been a more welcoming birthing experience for our daughter coming into the world. And, we would have been able to get her more help and more assistance. But in the end, I couldn't nurse her. It was just not going well for her. For me, she wasn't getting enough. And I had to change over formula, and there was a lot of shame, attached to that for me, because I thought, I'm 19. Wow, I'm young and I'm healthy, and if I can't do this well, like how am I ever going to actually raise this person well? So it was a lot. It was a
Yeah.
lot, and but then on the other hand, I thank God, I thank my lucky stars that I was young, because there was where there was pressure, there simultaneously wasn't pressure, because I had no expectation.
Yeah.
Like there was no social media. There was no like, oh, you should look like this after you deliver. Oh, your baby should sleep like this. Oh, your house should look like this. Mothering and pregnancy and delivery and all that stuff is so blissful. It can seemingly be so blissful in some people's Instagram feeds. So, in that regard, I was fortunate, but I wish that I'd had more support, so that
Right.
I could have made her more comfortable those first, definitely first year of her life anyway.
Yeah, but thankfully, because you've had like these challenges and trauma, like I feel like as a mother, like that's probably helped you. Like you're going to help so many more people, and you are, like, through your book, and you have more stories to tell and more encouragement for other moms out there because of, what you've gone through. So, like, I feel like
Sure.
your tragedy, trauma, you can turn that into a triumphant story for a lot of people, which you are. Like I feel like
Well,
you're encouraging a lot of people.
oh, well, thank you. Well, and 100%, right? Like, I mean, when we're in the thick of it, we never really understand why we're having the experience. I was sexually abused as a young girl as well, through from a couple of different male relationships in my life. And, when you're in it, you don't really understand why it's happening. And then, you flash forward 30 years, and I'm speaking, in front of a room of 1,000 people at a gala, calling people higher to pay attention to this very real problem of, sexual abuse against minors, So, everything that comes to us, it can be confusing when you're in it at the time, and overwhelming. And, it could be easy to slip into the victim mentality. But if you're able to extract yourself from the situation and the scenario, and have some peace in knowing that, I don't want to be corny, but that everything ultimately, there's something good that comes out of even the bad things in our lives, that, it enables you to go through it with a lot less anxiety, and you're able to process it in a different way. But again, that's like hindsight, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But when you're in the thick of postpartum, or, in the thick of a miscarriage, it's, you can't see it. And, for me, when I miscarried, the one between Dominic and Michaela, I didn't have a lot of, distress around that, because I knew somewhere within myself that, that baby was not meant for me at that time. And I was able to release that expectation and look to, well, the baby that is meant, and the baby that does need to come in their timing will come to me. And, I look at Michaela every day, and I'm like, I can't take myself to that place to mourn a child that I never had, that I never knew, because it would mean that I would never have her,
Hmm.
So, that's how I'm able to find peace in the challenges that come my way, is by looking forward to what I got instead.
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting outlook. And I just want to go back a little bit because you mentioned the sexual abuse, and I did want to talk about that, just experience. How old were you, by the way, when this happened?
I was 12 when it started. I was 12 when it started.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was 12 when I was raped. And then that same year, within, pretty near to that, a group of guys that I went to school with, because again, back in the day, schools in Toronto anyway, they didn't have sort of separate educational systems for children with special needs. And this meant also kids with violent tendencies. So there was a classroom that was dedicated to these kids who, were not necessarily on parole, but they were in Fernie homes, so they had been removed from their family homes and they were placed in care and essentially court custody. And there was a group of guys that you're young, right? And you just treat everybody the same when you're young, and you hold no judgment against people and things that they may have gotten up to. So one of my girlfriends and I at the time would play with them on the playground because we were athletic and they were athletic. And they one day, 6 of them just decided that they were going to go to. First, they went to her house, and luckily for her, her parents were home. Her parents worked from home, and her mom was a stay-at-home. And my situation was that both my parents worked, so I was a kid. What do they call them? Latchkey kids.
Yeah.
So I had my own key and I would let myself into my apartment. So they came to my apartment, and my younger brother was outside playing, and he did this famous thing, peepholes in the door where you you can look out and see who's at the door. We had one of those, and my brother was famous for being a little prankster and covering it when he would come to the apartment. So it was covered, and I just assumed it was my little brother wanting to come inside. And it turns out it was these guys, and they pushed their way in and forced themselves on me. And I don't know, again, it was like I had the power of like Goliath, and something took over me, and I was able to get away and out onto the balcony and scream for help. But, and then following that, from the time I was like 13 to 15, I had a family member who would molest me when I would go for Sunday family dinner. So it was quite a few years of being sexualized and, having that, because I developed very young. I was 9 when I started to get boobs. I was 11 when I got my first cycle. So I didn't look like an 11-year-old kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I wasn't. Again, way back then, people didn't talk about pedophilia, and certainly, we didn't talk about rape, and there was no such thing as the Me Too movement and whatnot. So I didn't know that any of this was out of the ordinary. I just thought that this is how men behaved.
Wow. I'm so sorry you went through that, Shantelle.
Oh,
do you talk about that in your book? I didn't read it from cover to cover.
I do touch on it a little bit because I read this incredible book, Gavin DeBecker. It's called Protecting the Gift. And I touch on it a very little bit because I think for parents who have not been sexually abused, who don't have that in their story, and in their, their on a cellular level, that's not in their being. I think that what happens is there can be a sort of very cavalier relationship with online behavior and social media. I think so. I talk about it from that perspective, that a lot of sexual trauma and a lot of sexual abuse is now taking place online. People are sliding into our children's social media via their DMs and whatnot. And so I call parents to really, really be conscious of this and to really look at social media, not as a babysitting tool or like, you're letting your kids be like with all the cool kids, but really looking at it with a different lens of understanding that, this is where predators go now. They used to go to the playground, and they don't have to go to the playground anymore. Now they can sit in their homes and they can slip right into your kids' bedrooms. So,
yeah.
I talk about it from that perspective of like parents, you may not think of it this way because you don't have this past that I have. So I was very hyper vigilant with our girls, and I talk about it from the perspective of it takes 2 minutes for a child's life to be changed forever. And I know that well within myself because it happened to me numerous times, that this is a reality. So we had boundaries in our household, and thank God Yannick is such a compassionate and sensitive male, because he was totally okay with having these sort of what somebody might think is like an unrealistic, oppressive set of house rules. Like our girls were not allowed to go and sleep over at somebody's house if we had never been inside the house. So if we'd never been invited and been to somebody's home, like we didn't know the lay of the land, we didn't get a vibe for the parents or what the rules were like over there, they were not allowed to go. Now kids were allowed to come to our house, and if their parents didn't feel like they needed to give us they
Yeah.
didn't need to do a whole interview of us, then that's on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for us, so we were really strict with our girls in that way, and that we really wanted to know where they were going and who they were going with, what the family was like, what was the home like. And that was just, our girls were used to it. That was just the rule. We had to know the family, and we had to have been to their home if they wanted to stay over. And they were kind of cool. And it ended up like, our house ended up being the cool house everybody wanted to stay at anyway, so it kind of worked
It
out.
worked out.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, because obviously we were also always the youngest parents too,
oh,
right?
right. Yeah. You were like kids yourself, college kids.
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and just going back to what you went through, because there are a lot of moms who've experienced their own trauma, whether through in childhood or even as adults, but they never found healing with it, and now they're raising their own children, and struggling along the way because they still haven't found that healing or gotten the proper healing to become the parents that they really need to be for their kids. I know
Yeah.
on your website, and I'm going to quote. You said, I did the work on healing me while I was raising them. We literally all grew up together. Like, what are some ways that you were able to heal yourself, just along this journey, having had, the broken home that you came from, the sexual trauma? Like, what are some ways that maybe could be helpful for other moms listening right now that might be in a situation they find themselves in that they need help in?
Well, I think the key to that, the key to healing, it's so difficult, right, as women, because we take on so much, and our own work, our own inner work often takes a back seat, because really there's so much to do as a mother that by the time there's any time for you, you're exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that work and doing that healing, it takes energy. It takes commitment. It takes structure. Like, you have to be committed and devoted to it. So I think that what happens for us women, and certainly those of us who have trauma that needs to be healed in order for us to be whole, is that we tend to not do it because it requires too much of us. So the thing that I would say, and then we've got to go on a whole nother tangent with this, is that on top of, if you've had sexual abuse and trauma, oftentimes it's very difficult to have a healthy relationship with if you're a hetero person with a male partner, because there's so much distrust, right? And there's so much energy attached to trying to reconcile within yourself, well, this happened in me at the hands of a man, but yet I'm supposed to love and completely trust and give myself over to this man because he says he loves me, because so there's all this like pushing and pulling that's taking place that you don't really have the tools to get into and really reconcile that within yourself. So oftentimes a lot of people who've had that kind of trauma end up also then being single parents,
Yeah.
and then that adds a whole nother layer to the challenge of parenting and doing it well and doing it wholly. So the only thing I can say, and I do talk about this a lot in my book, and the only thing that I can say that worked for me is that I refused to let what happened to me take anything else from me.
Hmm.
It had already taken so much, that I didn't even understand how much it had taken until I dug into it, as an adult. So what I started to just decide every single day about it was like, no, you already took what you took. You got what you got, and you're not going to get any more. So it was
Hmm.
literally a daily decision to not have it rob me of anything that I wanted in life. And what I wanted more than anything was, I wanted a healthy marriage. I wanted a happy home, and I wanted to raise my children as a couple with my husband. So that meant, fighting it out in my relationship with him and not holding him ransom or responsible for the things that other men had done to me in the past. So it was a lot of, inner work, but it also took a lot of outer work of just being honest, and speaking up and saying, I'm in a bad place today. It's not you, and even being honest with the girls, from when the time the girls were old enough to understand, because it got to the point where they were like, why do we have these stupid rules? My friends get to do whatever they want. So when they were age appropriate, I shared my story with them. I shared why I had what they thought were unrealistic rules and expectations for them. And it really opened up our relationship because they got it, they got me a lot better, and they accepted that as, oh, this is because mom loves us. Mom is she's not being a pain in the butt. She's not being unrealistic. She's doing it because she cares about us. So this is actually a good thing. And it was easier for them to say to their friends, oh yeah, I'm not allowed to do that, but you're welcome to come to my house. So I think the biggest thing is that I think we all have to have grace with ourselves. We got to have grace about our history. We got to have grace for our past, and we have to have grace and allow ourselves to fall and allow ourselves to be broken and allow ourselves to be messy. We're so busy being upset with ourselves when we're not quote unquote perfect that we miss the whole journey of life, which is the messiness makes you beautiful, right?
Right.
Messiness makes you whole. The broken parts of you are what make you incredible to someone else, that makes you empathetic, that makes somebody makes you charming, that draw people to you. So I think that instead of trying to be negative about these things, is trying to find the and it sounds crazy, right? I'm talking about sexual abuse. Try to find the beauty in being sexually abused, but trying.
I know what you're saying.
Right?
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
You're like, wait, she's this woman's a crackpot. I don't want to listen to her anymore. But because it's if you're coming at life, and this is any part of life, and you're coming at it with anger, or you're coming at it from a victim mentality of why me and what, the only person that stunts and the only person that robs from is you. The person that's done it to you is long gone. They're, way, way, way long gone on their path. And, they might not even remember what they did to you, or they might think they didn't do it to you, which happened to me. I never did that. Okay. You didn't? Okay. I made that up. But, so I think that it's really about having grace and taking the space. And there are so many great books out there for healing, so many great books. And then if you have the ability, you have the means, finding a great sexual trauma therapist is saved me on more occasions than one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I every few years I find myself working with somebody again to get, another layer deeper. So, and get more out of me so that I can put more of me into me. So it's kind of a lifelong journey that you have to be open to doing the work. And even when you're exhausted,
Yeah.
you're exhausted.
I love that perspective. Especially because as moms, you're right. We put all the energy into doing for others. And then when it comes times for ourselves, it's we don't put that much work and effort into the healing that we need, or whatever it is that we need, just to make sure we're whole for when we need to be there for our family. I want to talk about your book just a little bit. So your book, it was written for what age range?
The first book, the kids' book, is just literally and it's actually from preconception, because a lot of times couples don't do any pre-dialogue about having children.
Mm-hmm.
They're just we're going to have a family. But they don't talk about, okay, well, what are your thoughts on discipline? How do you think a child should be disciplined? Do you believe in spanking? Do you not believe in spanking? Do you believe a child should rule the roost? Do you believe the child should, there are a lot of, parents that are no, I just I think Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith are famous for saying, oh, no, our kids raise themselves. They did their own rearing and made their own rules and stuff like that. I find that fascinating. I can't imagine how that works, but apparently it did for them. So, but you might marry somebody who thinks like that, and you're No, heck no. You get a little rap on the bum if you tell me to, you tell me to go screw off and not so nice language. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think, so the book really talks about that a lot. It's like, okay, well, what kind of human do you want to raise? What kind of people are you trying to bring into the world?
Yes.
And are we aligned in that?
That's good that you brought that up. Yeah. Continue.
Well, I mean, I've seen so many friends who are not aligned in that, and it's hard on a marriage. People think infidelity is what ends marriages. I can tell you that in my experience, that's not the case. I've seen a lot more marriages fall apart because they cannot come to an agreement on how they want their children to go out in the world, how they want to raise children.
Yeah.
So, I talk about that a lot in my book. And then obviously it goes on into, kids hit double digits at 10. And, we talk about bullying. We talk about, having, being in your children's lives, like really, really knowing your kids. Cause a lot of parents, like, my kid could never be the class bully. Well, hold on a minute. You don't know. You gotta ask. You gotta ask them tough questions. You gotta ask them daily, and you gotta ask them, are they being bullied? So it's really it's a book about connection. It's a book about being connected to your child, not allowing devices to raise your children, not allowing social media to raise your children. But like, if you're going to do this thing, if you're going to have children, you need to know that this is a lifetime commitment. So it's about laying the right foundation so that once they cross double digits and they go into the teen years, you've got a pretty good handle on them, and you've raised them in a way that they understand that you're on their side, but there is an expectation of behavior, because whether we like it or not, the world operates a certain way. Like, you might think that you should never tell your child no, but that child's going to go off to their office and they're going to ask for something or be late, and they're going to get in trouble. And there's going to be a consequence and there's going to be a repercussion. So I talk about it a lot. Like, you can want to raise them any way you want, but the reality is that the world still works in the way that it works, where there's a consequence for every action.
Yeah, that's good.
Every negative action.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Shantelle, for being here. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you and also get your book?
Oh, thank you. Well, they can find me. I'm mostly active on Instagram. I feel like Twitter turned into a political hotbed, and
Twitter is so awful these days.
It's so awful, and I'm like, you know what? I'm trying to find some joy.
Yeah.
So I'm not so active there, but I'm very active on Instagram. So you can find me at Shantelle Bisson. And I have a website, www.chantellebisson.com. And if you want to buy the book, obviously you can go on Amazon, and I believe it's on Walmart.com.
Thanks so much for listening to Time Out with Tinseltown Mom. If you liked what you heard today, please be so kind and rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.